Dearest watcher, there are things that even the biggest fan can't know, because they would have had to be on the set of Bridgerton to have gained the knowledge. But don't fret, we're here to make sure you will be in the know about all the backstage secrets of our absolute favorite show, Bridgerton. So let's not waste any more time and get started on some secret facts about Bridgerton only the cast know. For starters, the author of the Bridgerton book series worked as a consultant on the show. One of the reasons the Bridgerton series is such a huge success is because of how well it conveys the overall feeling of the books Bridgerton is based on. And the reason they were able to do that so faithfully is because they had help from a vital person, the author, Julia Quinn. Quinn was involved throughout the whole process of Netflix's attempt at reimagining her stories as a consultant. But at the same time, Quinn has been very vocal about her support of the producers, Shonda Rhimes and Chris Van Dusen, from the very beginning. Quinn told Oprah magazine in December 2020 that she's not going to tell Shonda Rhimes how to make a show. There's a reason Quinn is a writer and Rhimes a producer. Next, one estate, 4 settings. If you ever come across the Wilton house and wonder why it looks familiar, it's because its exterior was used for the shots of the Duke's home. The insides were given to Queen Charlotte. Filming took place at the Wilton house for the scenes in her bedroom, presentation chamber, parlor, and garden before it was handed over to Lady Danbury to serve as her library. And Cliveden Castle's dining room? Yes, also filmed at the Wilton house. Very economical of Bridgerton. The Wilton house is a very popular filming location for sort of historical dramas. Part of The Crown was filmed at the Wilton house as well. Following, on the other hand, over 5,000 costumes were used in the making of Bridgerton Season 1. What made Bridgerton instantly stand out was its original incorporation of modern music and fashion, infused with such a delicious amount of historical spice, peppered all over it, that you can't help but marvel at everything you see and hear. But as economical the use of one location for various different settings was, they absolutely did not skimp on the costumes. It took over 200 people 5 months to finish all the elaborate looks, between overcoats, shawls, and hats. And we're not even talking about jewelry, shoes, and headpieces. A total of 7,500 pieces were custom made to create 5,000 outfits. Daphne Bridgerton had a total of 104 looks alone. Just imagine all the love that was poured into all of these looks. Or better yet, schedule in another Bridgerton binge so you can appreciate it in its fullest potency, especially now that you know just how many costumes and pieces were curated to make Bridgerton look the way it does. Not that anyone needs an excuse to rewatch Bridgerton. Next up, Lady Featherington's hair was inspired by Elizabeth Taylor. So the story goes that Mark Pilcher knew that Ellen Mirochnik, the costume designer, had been to the Christian Dior exhibition at the V&A. This is where she had gotten all sorts of 1950s necklines and 1950 prints, and this ultimately led to Pilcher coming up with the idea to turn Lady Featherington into a red-headed Elizabeth Taylor. How exactly that jump was made doesn't matter. Trust the process. Look what happens when you do. Evidence of the inspiration is most evident in the beautiful hair of Lady Featherington. Following, and Queen Charlotte's hair was inspired by the Queen Bee herself, Beyonce. Turns out Queen C got some pointers from Queen B. When researching Queen Charlotte, Mark Pilcher found out that the real Queen Elizabeth has African roots in her ancestry. This is what gave Pilcher much more scope and the inspiration to create her gorgeous looks in a more interesting way. But it wasn't until the hairstylist saw a picture of Beyonce Knowles in the 2002 movie Austin Powers Goldmember that the picture finally fell into place completely. As they told Essence, "I thought that's what I want. I wanted the biggest afro someone had ever seen." And did you know that Golda Rochevelle, the beautiful lady who portrays Queen Charlotte, needed to be transported in a special high-ceiling van to get around between sets because her wigs were too big for normal transportation? Stay tuned, there were many more secrets coming up in the next part of this video. Did you know Queen Charlotte isn't in the books at all? Or that her character isn't the only one based on a real person? Who do you think it could be? What role did Jonathan Bailey originally audition for? What was the inspiration for the Bridgerton house? And who is that lovely narrator? Keep watching and you'll find out. So first up, Queen Charlotte does not exist at all in the novels. As big as her presence is, it's hard to believe that Queen Charlotte isn't even a real character in the Bridgerton books. Though she was absolutely inspired by the real Queen Charlotte, she was especially created for the Bridgerton show, and Julia Quinn thinks it was an amazing decision to make Queen Charlotte a part of the world she created. It's not just the newest character of the show, it's the biggest in every sense of the way. It has left the author in a limbo of her wishing she had put her in the books herself, and being glad that she didn't, because she feels like she would never have done as great a job as the people of the show have done, as Quinn told Town and Country. Next up, Will Mondrich's character is based on a real boxer, Bill Richmond. You may not have expected directed it, but Will Mondrich's character is inspired by a person who was very real. His name was Bill Richmond, and he lived between 1763 and 1829. Richmond was born into slavery in Richmondtown on Staten Island, New York, under the enslaver Reverend Richard Charlton. During the American War of Independence, Lord Percy, a commander of the British forces who was in New York at the time, witnessed teenage Richmond in a tavern brawl that involved some other British soldiers. This inspired Percy to arrange more fights with other British soldiers merely for the entertainment of his prestigious guests. And in 1777, Percy finally arranged for Richmond's freedom from Charlton and his transportation to northern England. Once there, Percy paid for Richmond's education and got him an apprenticeship with a cabinet maker in Yorkshire, which is where Richmond would go on to meet his wife, Mary. After that, the newlyweds moved to London, where Richmond would truly start his boxing career, well in his 40s. So next time you see Will Mondrich, remember the man in history that inspired his character, Bill Richmond. His story is absolutely awe-inspiring, and it should be more widely known he was the inspiration for the character of Will Mondrich. Following, Jonathan Bailey initially auditioned to be the Duke of Hastings. Actors don't always get the roles that they originally auditioned for, which is also the case for our Jonathan Bailey. It was only after the audition he did for the Duke of Hastings that Bailey fell into a conversation with the show creators and producers, and something else entirely simply clicked into place. The subjects of conversation naturally flowed towards family, men in society, women in society, and everyone's own personal experiences, given the nature of the show they were having auditioned for, which is when they asked Bailey whether he'd consider going for the role of Anthony Bridgerton, because they suspected that Bailey might be more of an Anthony than a Duke. They sent Bailey some scripts, and we know the rest. And now, the Bridgerton house was inspired by Lady Diana's Althorpe estate. It's the kind of staircase that you see princesses glide down from. It's hard to imagine anyone growing up in a place like the Althorpe estate, but it's famous for a reason. The Althorpe estate is where Princess Diana spent most of her teen years, and Bridgerton creator Chris Van Dusen was lucky enough to have visited the estate while he was in the process of developing Bridgerton. He was overwhelmed with the presence of the building, its opulence and elegance, but most of all, that staircase, as Van Dusen shared on his Twitter. That's why the interior of the Bridgerton house was heavily inspired by the Althorpe estate. Can you see the resemblance? And we saved the very best for last, Julie Andrews, our dearest narrator. There's a very good reason the voice narration voice of Lady Whistledown sounds so familiar. It's none other than the iconic Julie Andrews. In an interview with Star Lifestyle, showrunner Chris Van Dusen explained that they'd sent Andrews the script, who read them and ended up loving the script so much she just said yes. Andrews recorded all of her parts over Zoom in a studio in New York, and when you think about it, it really couldn't have been anyone else. We can't wait for Bridgerton Season 3. It's gonna be a long year. And that's all we've got for now. On Secret Facts About Bridgerton, only the cast know. Which one of these surprised you the most? And which one is your favorite? Let us know in the comments. And thanks for watching.